Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing with us the amazing opportunities within the Western Cape. So that actually took us on a lighter tone versus my original presentation where we're all going to die. To be able to find ways to prevent that from happening, I'm so excited to introduce you to our next panel. The idea behind it is that I have invited them to talk about resource insecurity from a South African context and to talk about how specifically their innovations and solutions are playing a role in climate change mitigation. So I want to actually take a moment to give them a hand as they come up here, and I'll do a quick introduction of everybody. We're just waiting for our last panelist to be mic'd up. This is more for the online people, but I think it's more that he needs more time to do his hair.
No. It's always perfect.
Excellent. Sorry, Berger, I need the
Feel a
chair.
bit out of
Can I
place.
sit here?
Yeah. But you
Sorry.
cleaned up good. Last time I saw you were looking very locked down.
Excellent. So a quick introduction to everyone before we jump into the questions, and a quick reminder to everyone in the audience here as well as at home on Zoom. You are most welcome to engage with our panelists. Please share with us any specific questions that you might have and anything that you're keen to know about. So in terms of our panelists, we have Keenan Lawrence. Keenan is the co-founder of SOG Water Solutions. It's a really, really exciting technology where they manufacture atmospheric water, basically taking it from the air, and that technology is being locally produced. So we'll get an opportunity to find out more from Keenan in terms of the work that he's doing. We have Berger Lundgren. Yes, I had to practice by myself. Who is the founder of Scandinavian Water and Sanitation. Originally, Berger's idea was to focus on the water insecurity issues in Cape Town, and he was doing that based on looking at Swedish designed low flush toilets. But the more that he got into it, the more that he realized from a South African context, it's way, way more than access to low flush toilets. And we'll hear more about that in a second. And then finally, we have Brett Thompson with now the perfect hair. Brett,
like that.
Brett is the co-founder and CEO of Mzansi Meat Company. Mzansi Meat is fascinating in that it is Africa's first cultivated meat company. He's going to tell us more about what that actually means and how that will actually change things from a resource perspective. So what I'd actually like to suggest is that I'll give our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves and to be able to tell us more about what it is that they are doing. So maybe I'll start first with you, Brett. Why? Why, and how much of a difference is it going to make?
I don't know, I've been asking myself, and is it mic'd up? Okay. For 10 years, I think, because I've been doing this for about 10 years, just looking at food systems and the role that animals play within them. And if you look at it from different lenses, environment, health, ethics, animal welfare, there's just a number of reasons why people can look at the food that we eat and particularly how animals are bringing it to table. So I stopped eating meat 10, 15 years ago, and then I, for about 10 years, was involved in a lot of animal advocacy, telling South Africans to eat less meat or even go, dare I say, vegan. It wasn't that successful. I can think you can all imagine at being at a braai while there's a chop, not me, on the braai. Well, maybe me. And then and I go up with my tub of hummus and I say, you should go vegan. Yeah, I didn't get invited back. So after like a lot of that work, and then I spent some time in Germany, not in Scandinavia, I'm sorry, but in Germany, close enough. Denmark, close enough to Denmark. I don't know. Sorry, is that I know it's football season getting up again, but and met a woman that had grown a nuggets out of chicken nuggets, but she had done it without the need of a chicken dying. So she had taken a few cells and then grown a chicken nuggets. And then I went to the San Francisco Bay Area and I was meeting companies that were growing meat from cells where a small biopsy is taken from an animal, and that is then replicated. The conditions that are required to get those cells to grow are then replicated outside of the animal, inside a lab at the moment, and then into a food factory in the future. And then I came back to South Africa and I realized no one's doing it here. So into 2019, me and my co-founder, Jay van der Walt, started Mzansi Meat Co. And our goal was to grow the first beef burger in Africa without needing to kill an animal. So I'll pause there and
that is
perfect.
perfect.
Thank you. That's way too soon to clap.
Hold your applause to the end.
I've got more to say, by the way. You'll change by the end.
So, Burger, how did you come to the transition? You started out working in the IT industry, looking at software development. Why sanitation? Why all of these things now?
Yeah, that's crazy, actually. I'm still in the software industry, but what's happening was, through the drought, I didn't want to have the buckets or yellow mellow and all this kind of thing. So we just imported a toilet for ourselves in our own house. And it works well, and people saw it and they wanted to have it. So I just find a couple of guys at the same school that my son goes to. And we started like a small business, something with the left hand. And then we got a call from a school in Eastern Cape, and they wanted to have the low flush toilets if they're going to work with in the environment they had. And the problem, they didn't have water all the time. And a low flush toilet, even if you use little water, if you don't have water, only works once, or you can use it, but then you will dig into problems. So we took off to meet them instead and find that the problems in Eastern Cape and in Africa and in the world are enormous. And but 1.5 years ago, I got the contact with one of the professors in Sweden, worked in sanitation for like 45 years. And we have started to develop a complete solution for schools. We start with schools, and we're doing a pilot now in November in Eastern Cape, and that we will take care of a bunch of schools to do like a sustainable solution for taking care of poop and pee. Yeah. Okay. And it's lovely. It's quite fun that you can, like in a professional context, you can talk about pee and poop like.
I don't know. It's like it's food, poo, and pee, water. It's
yeah,
like a cycle.
Yeah.
Perfect combination.
Right. Thank you for that, Keenan.
Yep.
You started out in information technology and was working in the automotive industry, and you decided to chuck it all, become an entrepreneur. Why and how is your solution a game changer? Tell us more about it.
Okay, will do. So firstly, just to add to what Brett said, I mean, you went, 15 years without meat? I ain't gonna go 15 years without water. Yeah, so I come from the automotive industry, spent with Mercedes-Benz, for example, spent a lot of time in Europe, China, the US. I mean, they all drink water. And yeah, sort of relocated to Cape Town a few years ago, and the entrepreneurial spirit, just pushed the boundaries, and I decided to give in and go with it. Found myself in the water space. So firstly, looked at it from an impact point of view, because like you mentioned, I'm originally from the Eastern Cape, understand the hardships of the people in the Eastern Cape.
I'm from the Eastern Cape too. I understand.
Port Elizabeth, East London, 300 kilometers away. Perfect. So yeah, and yeah, just understand the dynamics, particularly looking at schools, clinics, hospitals, and so on. And the impact side of me, for example, wanted to do something good. And then obviously looking at the sustainability and the financial side of the business as well, and found myself in the water space. What's nice about it is that it's an alternative source, but it's a sustainable source. And I think this is, I mean, with all of the different presentations we've been through this morning, similar denominator is sustainability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. And taking it further from the water perspective, Birger, do you want to maybe unpack your model a little bit for us so that we can understand? I mean, earlier on, I talked about the resource insecurity, the fact that we have all of these problems within South Africa. For me, what's really crazy is that growing up in South Africa, we never talked about the fact that we are a water insecure country. No matter where you are, even growing up in the coast, people would have pools in their backyard, even if the beach was a few kilometers away. Now we're in a different paradigm where people are starting to understand there's this difference in terms of how much of a scarce and valuable resource water is. How has your model been gaining acceptance and traction? I'm quite curious, especially when it comes to alternative sanitation models.
Well, the fun part when we came to the first school and installed the first pilot about a year ago, they had 2 pit latrines that were full, and there was about 80 learners at that school that was peeing and pooping around the school.
I love you try and work it into almost
but
every...
you know, it's like you can use, you know, like the more academic excrete facial,
it's
you know, that kind of stuff.
Here.
You know, that we call it what it is. And the thing was what was happening there, you know, the kids get sick because of the pathogens and the bacteria. And the next thing was to find a solution to solve this problem. And because they didn't have water, so we installed a hybrid version of a toilet. So users actually flush, so you get like a flush feeling, but the poop goes into a box. And actually we take the poop and we do soil conditioner of it, so you can actually use the poop to make food. So that's the like a closed loop, closed loop thing from mouth. No, from mouth. No, yeah, from butt to mouth. Yeah. And we do that together with the Swedish Agriculture Sciences, the university in Uppsala, and they're probably one of the best in the world in sanitation. And it's a really cool solution, and to make it, you know, like cheap, easy, and accessible for the kids in school.
I have to admit that when you described it, it immediately made me think of a conversation that I had a few weeks ago about Matt Damon in the movie The Last Martian.
Okay.
Where he used poop to grow his potatoes, essentially. Yeah. And now that brings us to the food topic.
Oh, that's a great segue.
So here's the crazy thing. Essentially, you're going to an animal, you're extracting cells, you're going into the lab, and you're growing the meat.
Yeah.
Why all of that? Why not just go with a vegan alternative, considering the fact that it's becoming so popular at the moment?
Yeah. Yeah, look, as someone who's been a consumer of plant-based foods for meat alternatives for 10, 15 years, and also I've worked in the plant-based industry, so that's actually my background. 10 years in food at a company called Fry Family Foods, Durban-based company, massive company now, fantastic South African story. But also I just realized after there's a certain group that you can appeal to with a vegan meat alternative, but ultimately there's a bit of a diminishing return. So your Beyond Burger, which is sort of the next gen of meat alternatives, fantastic. I go with mates to Hudson's Burgers down the road. They're all meat eaters. They'll have the Beyond Burger sometimes. But if they go into the aisle and they want to buy something for the braai or for the potjie, for shish nyama, that sort of real quintessential South African, or the turkey roast at the end of the year, there's something that meat alternatives just haven't been able to capture yet. And I don't even like the word alternative. So I'm a meat company. It's not an alternative. And I want to make something that is not a replacement or a less than, or something that is convenient because it's frozen nuggets. I want to make something that is exactly it's almost better than the version of what it was before. And it's possible. What we're going to be able to do is that, look, the cow's been with us for 10,000 years in domestic formats. We've hunted since 100,000, since the gentleman about the shoes speaking about earlier. The cows are sort of, they're reaching their peak in terms of efficiency, and we're going to be able to sort of take that step next. And I don't think we're going to see a massive shift towards a different food system with a veggie burger just yet, unfortunately. I mean, I love going and having a broad beans bunny chow, but like most South Africans after a while still want that meat, and it's part of our culture, it's part of our heritage. I mean, it's Heritage Day coming up in a couple of weeks' time. What is this also known as? Friday. Like, I'm going up to people and saying, put us like a veggie sausage on the braai. I'm tired of doing that.
Well,
I'm tired of doing that.
Family friendly.
Hey, this guy's talking about poop and pee. Yeah, but so I think to bring it back to the original question is that in the South African context specifically, I think there is something about meat that is just intrinsic to who we are as a country. It's different to the Europeans, actually. I've spent significant time with Danish, and they like super open and super new to like, oh, this is a new idea, some new food, I don't mind. South Africans, you go to a group of 10 and you say like, I'm a vegan, they show you the door, you know? So it has changed in the last couple of years, definitely. I know what it was like 10 years ago versus now. And I know what my mom's been vegetarian for 30 years, and she knows what it's been like in her lifetime. But so there's been significant shifts. But if we want to see a movement away from the South Africans eat 1 billion chickens every year, over 3 million cows, 3 million pigs, et cetera, that is a ubiquitous, that's a good word, ubiquitous food system that we're not going to change, in my opinion, by taking plant proteins and trying to replicate them in the meat space. We've got to take the meat space and innovate it. Well, that's my theory.
So I'm going to take a pause for a second and just check if we have any questions from the audience. We have one right here.
So there's away from
Mm. Yeah. I think that's the word stigma is a good point. So I think there's stigma attached to diet, and that's why everyone's so culturally sensitive when it comes to any changes in my food. When it comes to, I mean, just a little bit more detail, if it's okay, on the process. We take a biopsy. It can be the size of a peppercorn or maybe a little bit of a thread from a cow. It's just behind its shoulder. It's where your fast twitch muscle is. It's an adult stem cell that we then pop into a media and stimulate it with what we eat, amino acids, salts, nutrients, etc. And we keep it in what ultimately will look like a brewery with big vats, and we keep all those cells at a condition of about 37 degrees. I think everybody knows that if you've measured yourself recently, who has? Everybody, yeah. Everybody knows the temperature. You should be about 36 to 30 or 36 point whatever it is. So we keep it at that, okay? And then it just does it itself. Cells want to grow on their own. That's what they do. When it comes to genetically modified, there's some schools of thoughts, like within cultivated meat, whether or not you need to do it or not. It's not decided what's going to be that commercialization. That's an ongoing question. I think I see the negative exclusively from a view of stigma about going that route. It's going to be very difficult trying to explain what I'm doing now just without talking about genetically modified foods, and then trying to add that into it as well. Is that, yeah.
We have another question here.
Coming from Finland, same Sweden and Denmark, probably, like we have compost toilets in our house. Like, you know, middle class, pretty wealthy, okay doing family. Everybody has composting toilets, you know, in their public places, and compost it and we throw it in the, you know, veggie patches. But how has been the kind of the reception from in South Africa? Exactly about the stigma.
Yeah, that's a super question, and nobody wants actually a compost toilet. No, what everybody wants is flush and forget. And nobody wants to know what's happening when you press the button. It just disappears in magic. And it doesn't. 80% of wastewater in the world right now through waste plants go into the ocean and make a mess. And in the South African context, you have like 9,000 pit latrines. And that's a hole in the ground that you put everything in. And when it rains, for instance, it starts leaking into groundwater and you have the diseases and everything. And if you go into the big picture, it's about 2,200 kids that dies today with the age below 5 years old of diarrhea. And there's lots of it here also in South Africa. But so this is a long-term thing. So what we're delivering now is a flush and forget solution. But to use poop to farming, we need to start with the kids. You know, like if you talk to a 5-year-old, you know, like you eat and out of your body comes a turd, okay? and the turd is not good, right? But if you can take away the bad guys in the turd, it's actually carbon. And what the soil needs in whole Africa is carbon. So the more carbon you get into the soil, it's like a sponge, and then you get the water into the soil. So it's like, it's beautiful, but it's a long-term thing to understand that the nutrients in pee and poop is actually very good for the soil.
So, sorry, Jackie, just 1 second. That actually, so one part of it is the acceptance as far as food grown out of the poop. The other part of it is that for a very long time in the history of this country, the gold standard for sanitation has been a flushing toilet. And so in the past, there's been a lot of resistance in terms of having any other type of option. How have you been able to address this effectively?
The thing is, if you go to the toilet, it's actually the share with the hole in. And people think that's the solution, and it's not. But the hybrid toilet we are working with right now is you have like a flushing experience, but the poop goes in a box and it's treated separately. But it's still for the person using the toilet is a flush and forget experience. That's the whole idea with it. So yeah, the pilot we have, first pilot had been running now for 1 year. I love it. And they think they have a flush toilet, but actually it's not. Yeah, but that's the feeling you want to have. So absolutely. If you have the feeling, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Jackie, and then just behind Jackie. Sorry, Birgit, before you answer, can I just get the next question so we can hit everything in one round? Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, 1 second. Anybody else? Yep, there we go, Sitlinda. Affordability.
Okay, lots of.
Go.
Okay. Everything is fine. No,
flush and forget.
Flush and forget. Call me. No, it's lots of questions in different directions.
So yeah. I'm gonna sum it up for you.
Thank you.
So we have what happens from a technical perspective of all the materials that are coming out from the toilet, right? With the poop, you've already explained this is going towards soil conditioning and food. The question was with regard to pee. Then we had the question in terms of affordability of the entire system. And then we had about the summer houses. Urban environment, sorry.
Okay.
Maybe do the first ones first.
Okay. I need half an hour. No, and do it in 30.
Maybe just a tiny bit faster.
Yeah, okay. We start with the P is very similar to chemical fertilizers, the nitrogen and potassium and so on. And the P is, you can use it in the soil. And the thing is, P should never ever go into water. That is normally does now that we get growth in eutrophication. Yeah, yeah.
It's fine, I'm the chemist in the room.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for helping me out there. No, the pee should go into the ground, to the soil, period. Never into the waterbed. Regarding summer houses, I think 99 or 100 people want to have a flush toilet, period. And in Sweden, we have wastewater plants that probably state on the art of the art in the world, but it's 19th century technology that we try to solve problems in the 21st century with old technology based from UK, the Great Stink in London, for instance. Affordability. The thing in schools here is like almost nothing happens to schools. The government is promising, like flush toilets, especially in areas that they don't have water. It doesn't work. So what we did was to find a way to build toilets also, because a seat in the toilet, one toilet room, cost in South Africa between normally 55 to 75,000 bucks. And there's lots of middlemans and middle hands and money to you and money to you and money to you. So one toilet up in Limpopo cost 108,000 rand. And I think that's ridiculous. So we did like IKEA. So we put everything in like flat packs that we're working right now. And we use all the construction in aluminium. And the boards, people that are interested, this is not recycled. This is waste. So we take waste plastic and do like rock hard boards that don't suck water, that don't easy to clean and everything. And we build now a toilet. We are just in the pilot move now. It takes one day to do the building for 3 toilet rooms. And the second day we do the plumbing with the toilets and everything. And the third day, a rainwater harvesting system. And the fourth day, the kids can sit there and having a shit. And price-wise was a question. We have studied the market very carefully. And I can say we are about 25 to 45% cheaper than any solution on the market for them right now. Where? The location? In Johannesburg.
So I'm going to pick up on that last question, and I'm going to have the same question for all of you. So you're all doing something that's really interesting, that's very innovative, that by your own individual solution has an impact, especially when we're looking at all the resources that are needed to make these things happen. But how scalable is it truly? How is it possible to be able to actually have this where it's available on a mass level, if you like? Keenan, you haven't had a chance to say much yet. So we'll start out with you with the atmospheric water.
So yes, definitely scalable. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Our current products or solutions range from 100 liters to 1,000 liters per day. But we've now developed containerized solutions, and we've already submitted proposals to organizations from between 10,000 and 50,000 liters per day. So those are completely scalable solutions. Obviously, it's just adding on additional containers. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's cost. However, when we look at the renewable energy current situation, for example, all the talk with the IPPs is about PPAs. And we're saying, well, WPAs, water purchase agreements. So that is basically where
I love the way that we're just throwing the acronyms out there.
So water purchase agreements, and that is basically where we see not only the scalability based on the feasibility, but also the long-term opportunity, impact opportunity, doing work with government and municipalities in water stress areas, particularly the Eastern Cape currently. I mean, as you know, a few years ago, it was the Western Cape. Now it's the Eastern Cape. Who next? And this is what not only climate change, but rapid urbanization is leading towards, what next? Who next? And I think what we're all trying to achieve is to sort of mitigate against what is already happening around the country and around the world.
So just before we move on with that question, a quick one, and that is with regard to what you're doing where are you based right now? How much traction do you have? Which areas or parts of the country are you active in? And what is the kind of impact that you're seeing that your solutions are having?
Okay, so we're obviously based here in Cape Town. The traction, we've obviously got some letter of intent, not only locally, but also internationally, the US, and also in the SADC regions. We were fortunate enough, beginning of the year, to complete our first export manufacture for Eswatini, or formerly Swaziland. And we've done some work, got some tenders awarded with Cape Nature Reserves here in the Western Cape. And the impact part of that is, because those reserves are so far away, we've actually had to include the training and development opportunity within the project to train people on the ground, part of their staff, so that it firstly cuts the cost of us going every month in terms of SLA, of servicing, but also it provides education and training for their staffing as well. And then we obviously offer the remote support for that. But further to that, the technology also can enable community life, sustainable jobs, direct and indirect. And the best part is, from the hospitality sector, for example, return on investments of sometimes less than 6 months, even less than 4 months in some cases.
That's
so
impressive.
yeah, the bottled water market, I mean, as you know, it's a huge market in
You
South
mean the
Africa.
places where they produce plastic and not water?
Correct. So correct. So it's a 2.4
Nobody
billion
laughs.
rand. Yeah, it's a 2.4 billion rand market, growing 10% year on year in South Africa. And that's just ridiculous now, 2.4 billion rand in terms of the market versus the amount of carbon emissions at 828 grams per 500 ml plastic bottle. I mean, you can just imagine replacing that with, for example, AWG, even with the power energy impact, it could save you thousands of tons of CO2 emissions per annum, not to mention the waste footprint. I mean, you spoke about landfills earlier on. So yeah, that's I mean, it's huge impact. And it ticks the boxes of all the buzzwords that are going around these days regarding CO2 emissions, environmentally friendly, sustainable technologies. And
I'm actually so glad that you mentioned that, because if I am not mistaken, we're at a point where we find that a lot of times to sell technology and innovations, people are simply inserting buzzword over here. And somebody has been pointing at me quite intensely to say that we have a question from online. So I'm quickly going to have a look. What is the water consumption like per patty grown artificially versus free range? Is there any water consumption in the growing of the artificial meat? So I'm guessing that would be for you.
The poop gut, no.
Right.
Thanks.
Yes, so Burger, actually, it would be quite interesting if you
Burger,
go
so
if you go after to be talking about the impact that is coming from the food that you're growing out of poop. But Brett, first for you.
I wanted. I mean, I'm going to begin with this question and to sort of go a bit on the scale component, because it's kind of interlinked. And to start off with this, water consumption at scale of cultivated meat versus conventional meat. Free range, that's a topic. Like, what does that mean? It's very difficult. South Africans cattle predominantly free range, but in the last component of its life, feedlot. That is how it is. And again, what kind of water consumption is there between the two? When it comes to cultivated meat at scale, and again, I'm saying it at scale because currently what we're doing, it is not at scale. We are a startup. We are a year old. Companies overseas are older. Water consumption, like a fraction less. Land use is going to be a fraction less. Energy use might be a little bit higher. So it's not a silver bullet. There might be some things that we need to work on, because it is an operation that has to happen, and we need to get economies of scale to start driving down that per unit cost maybe for energy. So just to give you some context of the industry, so 2013, some of you might have remembered this, but the first burger, and also I don't like to use the word artificially grown, like we cultivated just because I mean, we're growing it in conditions that reflect natural conditions. So like what?
I thought you were going to throw in some buzzwords.
No.
Like we are cultivating it in the laboratory.
Well, we do. We currently do, and then and it's in a. We are currently doing it in something which is called an incubator. Which, I mean, if anyone's had children, that might sound familiar. And then what it goes from there is into something that's called a bioreactor, and that's got a scary word, but it's essentially what it's a meat brewer. So it's, if you drink beer, it's fermentation. It's a similar process, except we stick cells in it, not yeast. And that goes from 1 liter to 2 liters to 3 to 20 to, it's quite scalable, but the necessary things that inputs that you need to put in the beginning aren't that much different. You only just got to keep adding media. Media is a key component. So yeah, I might touch on that a little bit later, but the 2 numbers that I do want to give you, 2013, a Dutch scientist by the name of Mark Post, who's seen as the sort of, I don't know, uncle or godfather or whatever you want to call it, of cultivated meats, produced the first burger in London. He did it at a fancy event. That burger cost $250,000, okay, first burger. Within a decade, that price point had gone down from 1 burger costing $250,000 to $11. No one here is going to spend $11, whatever that is in rands, which fluctuates all the time, for a burger. But that almost falling through the floor is incredible. The industry has gone from 4 companies doing this in 2014, 15 to now 75 to 100 companies, with 25 of them roughly being what we're doing. We're making meat. Companies are specializing in all the ingredients along the way. One of the key ones is media, as I suggested earlier. Media, I mean, it's what your cells are growing in right now, but your body's, you know, packed it all tightly. You're a bunch of cells held together with scaffold and skin, by the way. We're just replicating that. I hope that doesn't sound too gross.
I actually love how you just bring it home and make it relevant so that we can.
You're all, you know, your meat factory.
No,
so anyway, that media, which we were producing in the beginning, something along the lines of like, I think it was like 700 Rand per liter. We've now got it down to $20. The prices are going to keep dropping. We can only beat this on price and then also understanding culture. That's my opinion. And then making the cost of compassion cheaper, because it's at the moment too expensive.
And I think also to add to that, sorry, something I thought about on my way here, but collaboration. For example, if the impact of your solution is that great, and the negative impact is that small, but there's other technologies to mitigate that or to use that for more positive. And that's sort of where we need to go up. You know, I believe in the collaboration. And all 3 of us here, wherever you, losing, for example, is somewhere where you could gain or I could gain. And that is sort of how we need to move forward in terms of startups and in terms of business for sustainability is.
I think that's actually a really important point that you've brought up, the fact that there's a need for collaborative systems, because essentially what you're talking about is a net zero approach.
Exactly.
And for that, preach. Burger. I also have had people wave at me like crazy to say that we're slowly, systematically running out of time. And I feel like there's so much more to discuss. So how about this? We need to do a wrap up, right? Burger, you haven't had a chance to discuss the scale question yet, but if you could do that together with advice for our audience in terms of what they could be doing by themselves, and that goes for the 2 of you as well.
That's tricky when you get like 3 questions in one.
I know.
But scalability, what we're creating right now in Eastern Cape, we call it Lutopia.
I love it.
Yeah, and that's where you know, like from going to the toilet to do like a sustainable solution in the circular economy. That was all the buzzwords in one package. That's what we're doing right now, and we want to. Everything is built for mass production, so everything is cut into pieces, easy to very IKEA, very inspired of IKEA, and just pumping it out. Because nothing happens in this country or in Africa regarding sanitation. And what the audience can do, you know, like support good things. Yeah.
Keenan, your advice.
Keep on pooping, yeah.
It's good business.
I don't know. I just think that, I mean, like all of the presentations and stuff we listened to today, I mean, the sustainability is the key. And from a water point of view, there's various alternatives to solving the water crisis. I mean, for me, the water crisis is the major issue. One of the questions in the beginning, which we didn't address, was actually, you know, what resource is the major crisis. And for me, it's water, because water is the fundamental recipe for green hydrogen, for power, energy, etc., etc. So water is important. And I think for us, there's various different alternatives, and AWG technology is an alternative. But more importantly, it's a sustainable alternative. And if you look at the city of Cape Town, for example, the amount of desalination plants planned, I mean, how many is actually running today, for example, around South Africa? Not many. So there's a lot of question marks. Point is, AWG technology has a place and a space. And I think we need all the support in getting the message out there. And the fact that it is sustainable. And if you do the feasibility study versus your bottled water, I mean, the cost is ridiculously cheap. Like I said, return on investment of less than 6 months. And also, just coming back to what happened in the Euros, for example, when you take a person like Cristiano Ronaldo and he mentions, you know, he takes a bottle of one of the big soda companies and he says, drink water. I mean, just look at the impact of that. Whether he knew it or didn't know what the impact would be.
He knew.
Exactly. So, yeah, maybe we need to invest in some support from Cristiano Ronaldo. But be that as it may, water is a basic human right in South Africa. And I think getting the message out there of the different types of technologies available and collaborative technologies that are available, I think that's important in driving that message home. And obviously funding is always needed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Brett, your
Sure.
10-second
10
wrap up.
second, funding. No.
Yes.
Look, I think, look, food choices, I think, is a fundamentally important thing, and it's everybody gets to make a choice 3 times a day. So you get an opportunity to choose something that requires a lot of good things to start happening when you start eating less animal products, and that's sort of what I've been driven by. And also the knowing that, like, it doesn't have to be ultimately it doesn't have to be a sacrifice, and that's what Mzansi Miko is trying to do. Is trying to create something that speaks to the core. I mean, South Africa is in our name. It speaks to the core of being South African, and we want to make it so it's enjoyable and fun, because food is meant to be that. And yeah, funding. So.
So I want to take a moment to thank our panelists, but more specifically for the fact that all 3 of them, go-getters who identified a certain need and simply went out there to be able to address it. Is it easy? Clearly not. But at the same time, it definitely is worthwhile. And it is something that's having a strong impact. All the little bits start to add up as we move in a systematic way. So join me to say thank you so much to Keenan, Berger, and to Brett as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So a quick one for our online guests. We're going to take a quick bio break now. For our in-house, in-person guests, we're having some Nordic cookies quickly for tea. So join us again in a few minutes. We will kick off the next panel at 10:02. So in 7 minutes time. Thank you very much.